Hello and welcome to All Time Conspiracies. In 1966, the sleepy town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia was shaken by a string of strange sightings. Reports of a mysterious creature the size of a man with blazing red eyes and 10-foot wings remain unsolved to this day.
Today on All Time Conspiracies, we'll be discussing the legend known as the Mothman. Could such a creature actually exist? It's time to open the conspiracy files. Before we analyse the evidence, let's take a quick look at the origins of the Mothman.
On November the 12th, 1966, 5 gravediggers in a cemetery near Clendenin, West Virginia, saw something unexplainable. They claimed to see a large humanoid figure with bat wings fly down from the trees and glide over their heads. Just 3 days after this incident, 2 couples claimed to have witnessed a 7-foot creature with glowing red eyes. Over the next 13 months, around 200 local residents claimed to be affected by something paranormal, and more than 100 claimed to personally witness the Mothman. The sightings ended abruptly in 1967, when tragedy struck the town. The city's Silver Bridge collapsed, sending 46 people tumbling to their deaths. On the day of the disaster, though, many people claimed to witness a mysterious figure standing on top of the bridge. The Mothman has become folklore in West Virginia. It inspired the movie The Mothman Prophecies, and is even celebrated in an annual town festival. But could any of the evidence actually prove that the Mothman did exist? We'll look at the most compelling eyewitness accounts as well as the evidence surrounding the Silver Bridge catastrophe to settle once and for all if the Mothman is real. On November the 15th, 1966, 2 couples, Mr. and Mrs. Scarberry and Mr. and Mrs. Mallet, were driving just outside the town of Point Pleasant, in an area known as the TNT area. While driving, they spotted what they thought were car lights in front of them. They quickly realized that these were actually the glowing red eyes of the creature known as the Mothman. They described it as a huge flying man with 10-foot wings and claimed it followed their car as they sped away. They drove straight to the courthouse and reported what they saw. The local newspaper headlines the following day read, "Couples see man-sized bird, creature, something." Sightings of the Mothman continued over the next year, with over 100 people claiming to have witnessed the creature. Author John Keel interviewed Point Pleasant residents and claimed that they experienced a host of bizarre phenomena influenced by the supernatural manifestations of the Mothman. These included increased UFO sightings, being visited by mysterious men in black, and of course seeing the Mothman itself. One witness even claimed, "It seems like it doesn't want to hurt you, it just wants to communicate with you." Could there be any truth to these claims? So this TNT area is called that because it was the site of a munitions plant during World War II. The actual name of the place is the McClintic Wildlife Management Area. In other words, it's full of farmlands, woodlands and wetlands. There's lots of wildlife around there.
Right.
Now, I think that maybe the Mothman is a mutation, some kind of victim of the chemical pollution and maybe even radiation from the munitions plant. That's what I think is going on.
It's an interesting theory. I don't know enough about science to know if that's actually possible. I mean, I've seen that on The Simpsons.
Is invalid.
Well, fair enough. I don't think that can actually happen. That sounds more like a comic book origin story. This owl fell into a vat of radiation liquid and came out as the Mothman, full of vengeance. Also, if that was the case, would there not be more than one of these animals? Is it just one that fell into a pot of radiation? I mean, you're assuming there's only one Mothman. People might have seen one at a time. That's true.
We've had loads and loads of sightings, hundreds of sightings by all the locals. They would... They're not seeing nothing. Yeah.
I mean, I just think it's more likely that it was dark at night, they were driving their car, they saw in the headlights, the headlights flashed against maybe an owl or a heron, sandhill crane, which are all native to this area.
Yeah.
And, that's what caused it to have red eyes, and they got scared and they mistook it as a Mothman. I'm sure it's much more likely that it would just be a bird that they've mistaken, surely.
Well, I think all the other sightings can't all be the same mistake, right? They didn't all take place at night. They didn't all take place with the animal caught in the headlights. If it's native animals, like you say, that they're mistaking for the Mothman, why don't they recognize the animal? Everyone should know what the local birds look like. And the sheriff, the deputy, sorry, on the night who took the witness statements, he believed they were telling the truth.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. That's kind of weird that he was so convinced and they were really convinced they saw something weird. And also the fact that, yeah, there were so many witnesses that like saw something. Yeah. But I feel like it's a small town, this kind of thing, someone sees a monster, everyone's going to start seeing the monster. Anytime they see a bird, they're going to mistake it as the Mothman, you know? Oh, I think it's just a kind of case of mass hysteria, I'd put this down to. But I will give you that. I will say that like the fact that the police chief was so convinced that these guys were telling the truth, I'll give you that. It's kind of weird.
Thank you. So I would say the witness statements can't be ignored. There are too many of them. But at the same time,
there was over 100.
Over 100, yeah.
Claimed to see it.
But as you said, there is no tangible evidence.
Yeah.
I'm theorizing here about what it could be. So I guess this is inconclusive.
I'd agree. I'd definitely agree. Inconclusive.
Now, before we look at our next piece of evidence, it's time for our profile of the week. So let's take a look at John Keel, an American journalist and author of The Mothman Prophecies.
John Alva Keel was born in New York in 1930 and is considered a significant influence in the UFO genre. He popularized the term Men in Black in an article written for the adventure magazine Saga entitled UFO Agents of Terror. His most notable work is The Mothman Prophecies, which was an account of his own investigations into the Mothman sightings. It was the inspiration for the 2002 film under the same name, where he was portrayed by Richard Gere. He was also a technical advisor to the Library of Congress in 1968 and a consultant to the Department of Health, Education and Welfare.
On the 15th of December 1967, the Silver Bridge collapsed, killing 46 people. It was the worst loss of life from a bridge incident ever recorded in US history. According to Keel, many of the victims were relatives of Mothman witnesses. After this tragedy, sightings of the Mothman quickly stopped, and very few sightings have been made ever since. The legend then arose that the Mothman appears as an omen before impending disasters. This photo allegedly shows the Mothman on the bridge. Could it be real?
Now, it's far too much of a coincidence that so many of the victims were related to the people who actually saw the Mothman in the first place. I think that's evidence that it might be an omen of some kind.
I don't know. I don't think it's as unlikely as you think, though. It's a small town, and over 100 people claimed to have seen the Mothman. So I think the chances that people would be related to witnesses of the Mothman are actually kind of high. Higher than you would assume, anyway.
Okay, but what about the fact that all the sightings stopped as soon as the disaster was over?
Yeah, I think that's if anything, evidence that the Mothman's fake.
Right.
Because I think it's a small town, not much happens. The only real news they've had is of this Mothman, and then suddenly an actual disaster strikes the town. 46 people get killed, and then people stop talking about the Mothman.
Right.
I think it's a case that there was mass hysteria in the town, and then an actual tragedy happens, and suddenly they forgot about that story.
I mean, that's a great theory, but I think there's far too many witnesses to the Mothman to dismiss it as mass hysteria. So that's where your theory falls down. So I still think you can't explain it away with science.
I mean, yeah, okay, the mass hysteria thing only works if you accept that all the witnesses, none of them saw anything. I'll give you that. So it's kind of dependent on that. Yeah. Okay, I'll give you that. But what do you think about the photo?
The photo is the strongest piece of evidence we have, right? That the Mothman might exist. There is something in that photo.
Yeah, okay. There's something weird in the picture, but I don't know. It's not the Mothman. It's probably not the Mothman. My brain says no, but my heart says maybe.
Exactly. So what do you think? Strong, weak, or inconclusive?
I'll give you inconclusive, but I think it's on the weaker side, to be honest.
Okay, I will settle for inconclusive.
Inconclusive.
Although sightings generally stopped after the Silver Bridge disaster, there was actually a sighting of the Mothman very recently. On the 20th of November 2016, an unidentified man captured these pictures while driving on State Route 2, just outside of Point Pleasant. He allegedly saw the creature while driving and pulled over to take these photos. He sent the images to a local news station, WCHS, who reported the story the following day. Could these photos show the Mothman has returned? And if so, is he back to warn us of another impending disaster? Now, these photos are arguably the best we've ever got of the Mothman.
Yeah, I definitely agree, but I'd also say that's not really saying much. You can't tell it's a Mothman from the picture. It could just be a bird.
It looks more like a man with wings than a bird to me.
It kind of looks like he's got legs, I'll give you that. But someone did comment online saying that maybe it's an owl with a snake in its grasp, and just the shadow makes it look like a man like with legs.
Seems a bit unlikely to me.
There's no sense of scale. You can't say that it's a man with wings without being there and seeing it.
But that's just one photo, right? But we've got multiple photos in recent years.
There was one other photo taken in this incident, and to be honest, that looks even more like a man with wings and more just like a bird.
I do have to concede that there is something very unconvincing about these photos. Also,
another issue with the photos. This happened last year on the 50th anniversary of the Mothman sighting. The first Mothman sighting was reported by an anonymous source to a local news station. I feel like they might just be wanting attention to drum up support for its 50th birthday.
She could be just a good citizen.
Come on. This is so fake. This is definitely fake.
I will concede that this is weak evidence.
This seems fake to me.
It's
pretty weak.
I think that's a weak.
The main evidence for the Mothman relies on witness testimony, which is notoriously unreliable. While the few photos we do have are intriguing, they are a long way from proving the Mothman's existence. It seems likely that this is simply a case of mass panic, probably heightened by attention seekers lying about what they saw, and people mistaking a bird for a supernatural creature. We can see recent examples of how panic like this can spread. Just look at the killer clown craze from 2016.
But in the end, we are not in a position to dismiss over 100 witnesses. We may never know what happened in Point Pleasant between 1966 and 1967, and it's unlikely that any new evidence will emerge. What evidence we do have just isn't convincing enough to prove the Mothman exists. Nevertheless, the Mothman has earned its place in West Virginia folklore. It just hasn't earned its place in reality. This case must remain open, but it's unlikely it will ever be solved.
But what do you think? Do you agree with our verdict? Let us know in the comments below, as well as any other conspiracies you'd like us to discuss.
And if you enjoyed this video, please do give us a like and subscribe and share it with all of your friends.
Thanks for watching.
See you next time.